When we talk about all the ways to get your pins on Pinterest, of course, what we mean is how are you pinning? Are you pinning via the native scheduler or via Tailwind? Are you pinning directly via Canva or something like If This Then That or Later or Planoly or any of those third-party extensions that allow you to pin on Pinterest? Now, outside of pinning your own pins on Pinterest, in this video, we're also going to consider that third parties will be pinning your pin on Pinterest. Ideally, we want our people who click in and read our content to save their own copy of your pins when they're using the Pinterest app. This is really easy in mobile. If you open a post, if you access a post through a pin on mobile, there's like a little save button across the bottom. It's really easy to click that button and save a pin. There's also the Pinterest browser extension, which like I've got it installed right here. It will allow me to save a pin from this website if I click that browser extension. Or there are third-party extensions that we can put on our site like Grow or Social Warfare or Tasty Pins. All of those are examples of ways that we are allowing our readers to share our pins on Pinterest. So there are endless ways to get your pins on Pinterest. And a lot of bloggers don't realize that not all the ways are equal. Now, I'm going to say right up front at the beginning of this video, if you start watching this and you find it overwhelming, there are two takeaways from this. I'm going to go into supporting why I'm saying what I'm saying, and it's going to get kind of overwhelming and confusing. And so if you get into it and you're like, this is awful, take away these things. The best way to introduce your pins to Pinterest yourself is with the Pinterest Native Scheduler. And it's very, very important that you look at what Open Graph data is being used for your site or for your post, and that you are considering that Open Graph data as far as Pinterest keywords go. If you don't know what Open Graph data is, that's okay. We'll get there. These are just the main takeaways from this video, and I'm stating them right here at the front of the video so that while we're going through what we're going to go through, you're not feeling like, oh my goodness, where is she going with this? Okay? So I am claiming that the best way for you to get your pins on Pinterest is the Pinterest Native Scheduler. And this is for two reasons, not just one reason, but two reasons. The first reason is that you immediately have control over what information you put in your Pinterest pin title and description. And we've looked at in other places in this course why it's so important that we have control over what information goes in our Pinterest pin title and our Pinterest pin description. So we're not going to go over why that's important again, but you should have an understanding at this point of how important that is. And when you upload with the Pinterest Native Scheduler, you are 100% in control of that. Okay, so for example, here's a bunch of pins I uploaded with the Pinterest Native Scheduler. Here's a pin for spinach dip, and I really want to open more than one pin. So here's a pin for spinach dip, and then a few days previous to that, here's another pin for spinach dip. And when I scheduled these in the Native Scheduler, I scheduled them out at the same time, but I thought to myself, oh, I could also be targeting the word finger food with this. So here's one. I did the description, I did the title, I targeted all my keywords. Cold spinach dip recipe is one that I was targeting very specifically here. And so I've got that word in the title and I've got that word in the description. And then I have a bunch of other words in the description, but because I uploaded it with the Native Schedule, I thought to myself, oh, I should also be targeting the word finger food because this is going to be the perfect finger food result. And so I added finger food to my title here, and I added finger food to my description here. And the scheduler, the Native Scheduler, allows me that kind of control over the description and the title for each pin. Now, Tailwind is probably the most popular third-party extension. And so I'm going to address Tailwind next. But before I address Tailwind, I'm going to say something that I hope you will understand the gravity of this. If you're a new pinner, just know that what it means for you is that the Pinterest Native Scheduler is the best way to get your pins on Pinterest. If you're an established pinner who's been on Pinterest for a long time, you might hear this and think, oh my goodness, that is why Pinterest doesn't work for me the way it did back then. Okay, so everything that we're talking about in this video has its feet in historical events on Pinterest, some of them that you might remember if you're an established pinner. Do you remember in 2016 when Pinterest always pulled the alt text as the description? And so the common practice was to put your Pinterest description into the alt text. And that was an inappropriate use of the alt text because it's not what the alt text is for. And eventually, Pinterest stopped pulling the alt text for our pins as the description. They stopped pulling the alt text as a description for our pins. And if you remember when that happened, there was this time when at first no one noticed. And then people started to notice. And then people started to realize that their real good descriptions that they were creating for their pins weren't going out with their pins, and that was affecting their traffic. This has happened over and over and over again in the background in the following years after that change, and yet nobody's talking about it or noticing it like they did before. At different points in history, so anytime over the last 5 years that you could look back and pull up a day in history, different third-party apps are pulling different information from Pinterest as the description, depending on who and how they pinned it. So that means that if you are regularly pinning with Tailwind, there's been times in the past when the description that you were setting with Tailwind wasn't working. Or there's been time in the past when the Pinterest changed their API and some functionality of Tailwind wasn't working quite the way it was supposed to. And this certainly doesn't just apply to Tailwind. This applies to every third-party app that I have ever experienced for Pinterest. The second reason, outside of the fact that you have complete control over the Pinterest Native Scheduler descriptions and titles, the second reason, that's the first reason that I want you to use the Native Scheduler. The second reason is that it is unlikely that in the future, tomorrow or 3 weeks from now or 6 months from now, that Pinterest will do something that will break the work you've already put in. So if you're using Tailwind and you're scheduling 6 months out, there's no guarantee in 3 months that stuff that's still going out in 6 months is going to be going out with the description and the title that you're setting. I believe that Pinterest wants these descriptions and titles that we're setting, and that the fault of this issue where the third-party apps don't pull what we think they're pulling, the fault of that issue isn't like, oh, Pinterest stopped them from doing that. I think Pinterest makes changes to their API and these third-party apps aren't quite on top of it. Lots of people don't ever talk about this. In fact, there's only one other Pinterest instructor that I've ever come across that talks about this. Now, currently, Tailwind is the next best way to get your pins on Pinterest. Currently, Tailwind descriptions and titles that you set in Tailwind, when you upload a pin image to Tailwind, they do go out. And I can prove this. I've got one for you. Right. Oh my word, did I close it? Right here. I've got one for you right here. I'm not going to make you watch me pin a pin through Tailwind because it is painful. I don't use Tailwind, and so I don't know where all the buttons are, and it takes a really long time for me to pin a button through Tailwind. But I pinned this one just about a month or two ago. So right now it's March 2023. I pinned this just a month ago, and this is the description I set in Tailwind. I put Tailwind description on here so that you'd be able to see it, and it pulled the correct description and title from Tailwind when I pinned it. So if you're using Tailwind on a daily or weekly basis, you're using it to schedule your pins out for a few weeks ahead, that's great. It's working. I don't want you to be scheduling pins 6 months out in Tailwind, thinking that you're doing a great thing for yourself, when in actuality, we don't have a clue how it's going to be working in 6 months. But Tailwind, currently, next best way to get your pins on Pinterest. Now, beyond the Pinterest Native Scheduler and Tailwind, I haven't actually tested a lot of third-party schedulers because I just don't get why I would. It's not worth it. You can go ahead and test any third-party schedulers you want, put your pin in them, set the description, make something real clear for yourself so that you can identify the description, go ahead and get it pinned, and then come back and check and see if your title and your description are going out the way you set them. Okay, so that is so crucial. Now, that's just you introducing your pins to Pinterest. That's just one side of the coin. There's a whole nother side of the coin, and that is facilitating the third-party pinning of our pins to Pinterest, meaning that when your readers are on your site and they want to save to Pinterest, that we are doing whatever we can to make sure that the description and the title that we want to go out with that image also does go out to that with that image, as well as we can have control. We can't have complete control. Anybody who tells you they can have complete control is lying. Let me demonstrate for you all of this craziness as best as I can. Now, I've tried to record this video like 4 times. This is the last time I'm recording it. I'm keeping this one a little bit more surface than I kept the other ones because this concept gets so muddy, and it also changes so often that I can't even be certain without retesting every single thing that we're going to talk about. Without retesting it today, I can't even guarantee that the glitches, I'm going to call them glitches, that we see happening 3 weeks ago are still happening today. That's how often Pinterest changes. It's like every time they update and make a little change, they break some connection with some third-party thing. And this being the information that we want to go with the pin is affected. So it is really, really important that other people create pins from our sites. We talked about your created pins and others created pins. When you're in your Pinterest analytics, you will very often see these others pins here like this. That is a third party that has created a pin to your site while they were reading your article. Like say they were in the app and they clicked save. Okay, so if they're in the app and they've got your article open and they click save, that's not them repinning a pin. That's them pinning your pin. It's them creating your pin to your site. And so they'll show up. In your analytics, the source will be others pins. These pins appear on those people's created tab. And of course, Pinterest is going to pull information from your site for that description and title. And therefore, we want to try to understand where they're pulling that information from, and we want to try to be in control of it as much as we can. So Pinterest uses Open Graph data for their descriptions generally. Generally, when other people pin, they pull that Open Graph data. Sometimes we use third-party apps like Tasty Pins or Grow or Social Warfare. There's third-party sharing apps. When you go to my site, I've got Grow on my main site. And when we click into Grow here, when we click into a post here and we click Save to Pinterest with this Grow sharing app, that's what makes these buttons here, it's going to pull up my pin image that I've set on the back. So I've set this in the Grow plugin at the back. And if I save it, it does a really curious thing. Okay? It does not use the pin description that I set in the Grow plugin. It just pulls the meta. If you're using Grow, and lots of people are, and you've never noticed this is probably hurting your Pinterest account. If you've taken the time to craft a beautiful pin description and put it in your Grow plugin and then pinned from your own site with your Grow plugin, you have to realize that beautiful pin description that you crafted and set back there isn't going with the pin. It isn't going with the pin at all. And if you are using any other third-party sharing app on your site, you need to be testing it to see if it's going with it. What is much worse than this is that I can test this and I can demonstrate this to you, but we know, because we talked about this before in the quick overview of the platform for people, we know that Pinterest isn't always showing us all the information that they're collecting for pins on the front end when we're logged in. We looked at Pinterest logged out, and we're going to look at Pinterest logged out again in this video here, because I want to show you that Pinterest, depending on how people pin. So you don't have any control over whether your user is pinning with Grow or pinning with their Pinterest browser extension or clicking save in the app. You don't have that kind of control. And depending on where they do it and how they do it, Pinterest pulls different information from all over. So I opened up some pins to demonstrate this. And this is interesting to me because a lot of these pins are for the same post. Now, we're looking at Pinterest logged out now. I'm not logged into my site. This is logged out. This is Pinterest showing us things on the back end that we don't see in the front end. And we get a kind of a more interesting idea of what they are looking at when we look at it logged out. We see that this pin has these gray bubbles here. Okay, this is keywords that Pinterest has assigned to this pin. Pinterest hasn't known this post on my site for very long. The longer Pinterest knows a post on your site, the better they will get at these keywords. It takes time for Pinterest to update and understand your content really well. And there is absolutely a link between pin A and pin B and pin C on your site. Pinterest knows what other pins go to that URL. And if you use a keyword for one pin for a URL on pin A, if that pin does well, if that pin gets traction, it's all about traction. And Pinterest really comes to understand pin A really well. Pin B for that post can still have the same keywords applied, even if you don't use those keywords for pin B. Okay, so this is a newer post to Pinterest. Pinterest is still collecting information for all the different images to this post. But look at this. If I click on more information here, Pinterest has populated the title of the post as its further information, which I think is interesting. It's using like the actual SEO title. This is what's set in Yoast for the title. Here's another pin for this post. And if I click on more information, Pinterest has populated the description that I set in the Pinterest Native Scheduler as its more information. Now, this is probably because Pinterest didn't scrape the site for this information because I uploaded the pin to Pinterest. So over here, this is one that somebody else has pinned. I didn't pin this awkward horizontal image. Somebody else created this on my site, and Pinterest pulled the meta for the description, and then it populated more information with the title that is set in Yoast as the SEO title. This one I created, and it's just repeated its description. Here's another one that somebody else pinned, I guess. And I think this is the meta. This is the meta. And when I click more information, this article is so old, this pin is so old. I don't have the slightest clue where this came from. This is not some pin description in Grow. This is not some metadata that is set. This is not an excerpt from the post. I think this is a description from another pin to this post that they've populated in here, that they've just taken a whole nother description. This sounds like something I would have written that I probably wrote as a description for a pin in the past. I didn't write it as the description for this pin, or maybe I wrote it as the description for this pin originally when I pinned this, and then somebody else pinned it and it pulled the meta, but then when it aggregated, it was like, oh, look, this matches. Let's put this. Anyway, it's different than the other ones we've looked at. Here's another one for that BLT Crostini thing. Okay. I didn't pin this one. This is just the meta. I think this is the meta. The more information is the alt text. No, I'm serious. This is the alt text. I don't know. I don't know why the alt text is here as the more information. I'm seeing this more and more often, though, lately. Okay, here's a whole nother one. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, this pin, I specifically pinned with the Mommy on Purpose account from the Fairy Garden DIY account. So I created it as a third-party pinner using the Tasty Pin extension. The Tasty Pin, like the sharing extension. So this website has Tasty Pins. So if I go to Fairy Garden DIY, remember I showed you how Mommy on Purpose had Grow? Okay, this site has Tasty Pins as its sharing extension. So when I am in here and I click, okay, I'm in an incognito window. Is that why it's not working? Let's just go over to a regular window here. Is this it? Yes. Yes. Okay. So I clicked to save it with my browser extension and see it's pulled up images that aren't anywhere here in the post. That's because these images are set in the back in Tasty Pins. Okay. So I set these images in Tasty Pins. I set a description in Tasty Pins in the place where I can set a description. And then I went to the Mommy on Purpose site and I saved it using the Tasty Pins extension. And currently, when I pinned it, the day I pinned it, I went to Pinterest and I looked at the pin, and I could see, just like I put Tailwind description there in my test bit thing, I could see Tasty Pins. So I knew it was from Tasty Pins, and I knew that it had pulled the description from Tasty Pins. It worked the day that I did it. This is 2 months down the road from having pinned it. And Pinterest has done this weird thing where they've replaced my description visibly on this description spot right here. They've replaced my display description with, I think it's probably just the opening part of the blog. I think it might just be the opening, it's just the opening paragraph of the blog post is what they've replaced it with. Yep. Okay. So they replaced it with the opening part of the blog post. It says read more, but you cannot click read more. I don't know why it's like that. Look at this. Isn't that crazy? So they populated the more information with the description that I wrote in Tasty Pins. It's still there. Pinterest can still see it. But then they also pulled in the front of the blog post. I don't know why they did that. I don't know. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I do know that it's not how it's supposed to work. And I do know that we need to be aware of it. Now, my gut feeling is that because Pinterest can still see this, and because it was there initially, that the description that I'm setting has value. Unlike with Grow currently, where the description I'm setting in the back has zero value, it never populates. It never comes in. Currently, at different points in history, this has been different. At different points in history, it has come in. And if you want to take this even a step further and get like really crazy and out there, Grow actually has multiple spots where you can set a pin description. It's got this one. Oh, if I edit the post. I'm not actually going to edit the post, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you scroll down, Grow has this spot here where you can write a custom pin description. It doesn't work. Don't bother. Grow has another spot. If you edit on the pin level right here, where it's directly at the image level in the post. And right now this isn't working. I just tested this the other day. That's why it's in there. So right now when I pin this description didn't go with it. But I have seen in the past where this description did go with it. And there's no guarantee that this description won't go with, in fact, I should take it out because there's no guarantee it won't go with it in the future. I'm just saying we need to be aware that just because somebody says they're taking our description from whatever the method is that we're pinning and putting it in Pinterest does not mean they are. They don't have that kind of control as a third party over the platform. You have that kind of control in the Pinterest Native Scheduler. And the only place that we see Pinterest very, very, very consistently pulling data is that Open Graph tag. Now, we talked about the Open Graph tag. If you have Yoast plugin installed, I think even the free version, if you set this meta description right here, that is the Open Graph tag that Pinterest will pull. If you're like, oh my word, I don't have the slightest clue what my Open Graph tags might be, you can go to Open Graph XYZ and you can put in any blog post from your site here. So I'll use this one, for example, because we can see that, this makes sense. You can open this, copy your URL, and you can paste this into opengraph.xyz. And it's going to tell you what that Open Graph data is. So if somebody comes to my site and pins this pin, there's a very, very, very good chance that Pinterest is going to pull this data. And so, yes, I know that on the Yoast plugin, that's for Google. I know. It does not hurt me to have another good Pinterest keyword in there. I can at least target 2 Pinterest keywords. So I've got chore chart reward ideas for kids in here. If I'm really smart, I would go ahead and add another one. Google is not my main concern. Pinterest is my main concern. If Google is your main concern, you might not want to be, excessively messing around with your Open Graph tags, but then just realize that this is beyond your control. People are going to say stuff. You're not going to have the 100% control over what they're saving. And so let that go. Take the time to be in control where you can be in control, which is setting your own description on your pins that you're uploading through the Native Scheduler, or currently it's your Tailwind, but I really hope you understand why I'm saying currently. So, as time goes on, if you have done a good job of introducing these pins with these good keywords to Pinterest, as time goes on and the pins gain traction, Pinterest will apply those keywords to other pins that go to that URL, and it will become much less of an issue how other people are getting your pins onto Pinterest. So I'm gonna stop this here. I could keep talking about this for a really long time, because for every single method of uploading a pin, we could inspect that method and discuss that, and we could make guesses at where on earth or how on earth pinners are pinning that is causing Pinterest to pull information from all kinds of places, like we looked at here. This one is the description in Tasty Pins. This one is the alt text. This one, I believe, is the description from another pin. This one is this actual description that is right here. This one is the title tag. Like, we can't be in full control of this when third parties are pinning, but these pins are related. And once Pinterest knows what this image is about, they will recognize other images from that URL. In fact, just to prove this, I can show you Pinterest canonicalizes. Is that what you call it? Pinterest canonicalizes your content. The first pin that you pin to Pinterest for a blog post is very, very important. Okay, get your good keywords in there. Don't just post a post and think, I'm going to come back and pin this later. No, you pin it right now with the Native Scheduler. Get all those keywords in there that you really want in there, because Pinterest will canonicalize and relate further pins to that URL via that first pin. Let me show you how I know this, just so you don't think I'm crazy. This pin does really well for my site. Okay, it has 80,000 impressions currently and just about 2,000 outbound clicks over the past 30 days. I'm going to take this pin, just the pin ID, and I'm going to put it in a special string of, let me see if you can see it in the source code actually. Instead of confusing you further, let me see if we can see it in the source code, which we have looked at. Let's go here. Okay, it looks like we probably could see it in here, but it's too confusing. I wouldn't know exactly where to look. So, oh, there's canonical URL. See, it lies. It says there's none. I will bet you there is one. Okay, so I've got another string of backend code that I don't really share and teach about, but we'll use it for this. I'm going to paste that pin ID in here, and I'm going to pull up this pin, and I'm going to look for the canonical pin ID, and I'm going to take this canonical pin ID and open it so that we can demonstrate that Pinterest believes this pin is actually, let's open it logged out, because I'm going to show you a very cool thing that Pinterest is doing right now. This is March 2023, pinterest.com/pin. Here's that canonical ID. So this is a different ID than the one we originally opened. This is the pin that Pinterest thinks is more important about than that pink pin that we looked at. Even though this pin doesn't bring as much traffic to my site, Pinterest is trying to rank this pin in Google. At least that's what I think they're doing. Okay, that's not gospel. This is just my opinion. See this? How Pinterest has given this pin words in the URL. This is kind of new, as far as I can tell, to the last year or so. Pinterest is trying to rank this pin in Google. They saw this pin, they got this pin, they got a good understanding of what this pin was about, and they gave it a real URL, one that Google would find value in, instead of just a string of numbers. There's no value to Google in a string of numbers. And Pinterest is saying that that pink pin that I looked at, that's bringing all that traffic to my site, is a canonical after. I don't know actually what the words are for that. It canonically came after this pin. And the things that Pinterest believes this pin are about will be applied to that other pin. So over time, Pinterest will come to know what your URLs are about. If your pins for those URLs gain traction and they get a lot of context, the later copies of pins for a post will not matter as much as the first initial copies of pins for the post. So you really need to be spending your efforts for your initial pins when you're uploading them to give them good keywords in their descriptions and their titles. Do it through the native scheduler so that you have complete control. And if you can, go ahead and set some good keywords in your meta. Make sure you're checking any third-party scheduler or extension that you are using or making available to your readers to use, just to see where Pinterest is pulling that information from and if you can be in control of it. Okay, I'm going to wrap that up there. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming. We'll move on.